Okay, it's going to be a review of WWF No Mercy 2001. So we're going all the way back to October 21st, 2001 from St. Louis, Missouri. They did about 15,000 in attendance, 325,000 pay-per-view buys, which is a little bit lower than Unforgiven. But I did want to make the point that DirecTV actually dropped the WWF pay-per-views after SummerSlam. So, you know what? That might explain that huge drop-off between SummerSlam and Unforgiven. I think a lot of people look at the numbers in the fall of 2001 and just notice, you know, the enormous drop-off. So I don't know how much stock you want to put into the DirecTV situation, but I'm sure it did play, a part in the pay-per-view buy rates dropping. But the bottom line is, I thought this was an awesome pay-per-view. I really love this show. Great double main event. You arguably got my 5 favorite wrestlers of all time in the double main event. And on top of that, you got the Saliva song, Click, Click, Boom, one of my favorite pay-per-view themes. I think a lot of people love this theme, and it just fit very well with this pay-per-view. And it also really just, it was just kind of things just getting back to normal. You know, I think a lot of people would agree that Unforgiven 2001, there was a little bit of a dark cloud over that show. But I think when you get to No Mercy, it really felt like things were getting back to normal. It had great energy. And I think the situation in 2020 with, the shutdown and everything, it kind of made you appreciate the post 9/11 stuff, even more. Because as bad as 9/11 was, it was more of a temporary, I think people were affected by it temporarily, but nationwide and worldwide, it wasn't as earth-shattering, I think, as the whole 2020 situation was. So I did want to make that point. So yeah, let's get right down to it. First match of the night, you got the Hardy Boys taking on Hurricane and Lance Storm for the WCW championships. Really fun opener right here. This was definitely a Raw quality matchup. I just felt like this could have gotten a little bit more time, but it had great energy. I thought Storm and Hurricane, they got to show off their athleticism a little bit. The highlight of the match for me was Matt Hardy. I remember, everybody remembered this spot where Matt was about to go to the top rope to do a leg drop, and then he just shouts out, "Now we go over here." It was just kind of funny the way he called out the spot. But yeah, you had Ivory. Ivory looked really good at the time. So she was actually with Lance Storm. And then Molly Holly, or Mighty Molly, was actually with the Hurricane. So you had the 2 females constantly interfering. So Lita played a huge part in the match. Lita was extremely over, and she was just, trying to stop the women from interfering. So she let Hurricanrana them out of the ring. The crowd was just great here. The Hardys hit the Swanton splash combination. And this is just an awesome way to start off the show. It didn't get enough time to the point where you would have said like opener of the year or anything like that. But yeah, the Hardys retained the WCW Tag Team Championships. So yeah, I mean, at this time, it just felt like there was too many championship belts. I'll definitely agree with Mick Foley on that. So let's move on to the next match. We got Test from the Alliance taking on Kane. And I gotta say, this is a really good match. Great showing from Test. To me, Test at the end of 2001 when he was with the Alliance and he won the Immunity Battle Royal at Survivor Series. This was a really nice run for Test. And they struggled at first. I'll definitely say that. I think crowd reaction-wise, him and Kane really struggled to get the crowd into it. But the more and more this went on, it got more and more engaging. I thought Test did a good job of using his strength to really get Kane off of his feet, which wasn't an easy task. He actually had Nick Patrick here as the special heel referee, and Test definitely used that to his advantage. He cheated behind the referee's back, used the ring bell. But yeah, Kane kicked out of the pump handle slam. He kicked out of a lot of different moves from Test. The elbow drop off the top rope. So Test is definitely an underrated worker. And I know a lot of people make fun of him because of his accent. The Rock made fun of him with the buck teeth and everything like that. But yeah, rest in peace to Test. I don't think he gets enough credit. But yeah, he was a hell of an athlete. And to me, like this might have been the best run of his career, this late 2001 in the Alliance right here. So he actually does go over Kane. He actually hits the big boot on him. So big win for Test right there. Really underrated match. The last couple of minutes, I really felt like they turned it around because you saw how much Chronic struggled at Unforgiven, especially when they were in the ring against Kane. But that was not to be. I thought Test was exceptional, considering he had to get a big man like Kane off of his feet. So good stuff there. Next up, we got Torrie Wilson representing the WWF, taking on Stacey Keibler of the Alliance. This is a lingerie match. And God, there's a lot to say about this. But yeah, I mean, I'll say this about Stacey and Torrie. They weren't very good wrestlers, obviously. And then on top of that, when I look back at their careers, you know, from a mic skill standpoint, they really weren't very good either. So it's amazing. They're Hall of Fame worthy without even really being that good. But you know, back in 2001, you could definitely argue that Torrie and Stacey were definitely the two hottest women in the world. I thought they were that hot. The great thing about Stacey and Torrie coming in my opinion, it took a lot of pressure off of Trish. It really did. So they really stopped using Trish as TNA and just let her focus on wrestling. So if anything, I think, you know, the addition of Stacey and Torrie was definitely beneficial to Trish in terms of wrestling. But yeah, Torrie and Stacey right here, it actually wasn't bad. You know, Stacey was actually a cheerleader for the Baltimore Ravens, so she was actually showing off, you know, her you know, cartwheels and that sort of stuff. And there was actually some really nice like reversal pins here, like really interesting stuff. You know, Torrie actually ended up winning the match, and she basically, you know, slapped Stacey on the ass, and that's how it pretty much ends right there. But yeah, when I look back at the history of Torrie and Stacey, I just felt like, you know, both girls were extremely hot, but it's almost like the WWF really could have got more out of them from a storyline standpoint. I think Torrie really had bad mic skills. I don't think, and she was just one of those girls that just hated being in the ring. But when you look back at Stacey, especially on Raw, like they could have done more with her. Like the most memorable thing she did was probably that whole Scott Steiner and Test feud, where she was like promoting Test with the testicles, and she did the lap dance for Scott Steiner. And so I just felt like she could have been used more. Like when you look back at Torrie and Stacey, I don't think either one of them ever came close to doing as effective of a job as Stephanie did in the Love Triangle, if that makes any sense. But yeah, this lingerie pillow fight here, they actually put this on the top 10 matches of the year Viewers' Choice Awards. I know a lot of people I think it was actually Jericho got pissed off about that, because, you know, he felt like a match like TLC 3 could have gotten that spot. But yeah, it was what it was right there. Really fun to watch, but you know, from a wrestling standpoint, I don't think either Torrie or Stacey really had their heart in it, to be honest with you. Okay, so next up we got Edge versus Christian. Christian's the Intercontinental Championship. This is the ladder match. So Christian is actually part of the Alliance at this time. All right, so they actually showed a video package here. Really good stuff. So, you know, obviously Christian turned on Edge, but it wasn't to the point where, you know, it didn't really get ugly yet, but Christian really took it to another level. So he actually faked like an accident with their mother. So, you know, Edge and Christian really aren't brothers, but in the storyline they were playing brothers. So Christian actually you know, fooled Edge into thinking that their mother was in a car accident. So Edge actually comes up to Christian and says, "Christian, we got to go. Our mom's been in a car accident." So while Edge is trying to you know, exit the arena, he gets members of the Alliance, and this is why it made sense for Christian to jump, you know, join the Alliance. This way they can gang up on Edge and jump him from behind. And so yeah, it really built a lot of tension to the feud. It was a pretty nasty thing to do. I mean, sometimes like you could be at odds with a family member or whatever, but sometimes if there's a death in the family, it brings family together. But yeah, that just shows you how low Christian was able to go. So yeah, I've always felt like Christian is more of a natural heel than a babyface, and I think it's only a matter of time before he turns heel in AEW. But yeah, this ladder match between Edge and Christian, it got a lot of time. I'm seeing here that it actually got 22 minutes. It didn't feel that long, but it did feel long. It's now when I watch this match, I always think about this kid at school. So there was this kid in my biology class, and I knew he was a wrestling fan. So I said, "So what do you think of No Mercy? Did you get to see it?" And he was like, "Yeah, man, that Edge and Christian ladder match. I thought it sucked. I thought that match was so boring." I was like, "Really?" I said, "I thought it was pretty good." And every time I think of that kid, later on that year, he actually like collapsed and passed out on the soccer field. I remember they had to call an ambulance, but I don't even remember if he recovered. So that every time I watch this match back, I think of that kid. And yeah, I kind of understand what he's saying. Like the match has just a lot of lag. It really is different because it's Edge versus Christian one-on-one. You're not getting that bang, 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 all those, consecutive spots that the TLC matches had. So it's a little bit drawn out. Like there's like 5 major spots here, and in between each spot, it's like very drawn out. But, they did a good job here. Christian really controlled the match. Christian was very methodical at the beginning, really got the upper hand on Edge. And, ultimately, they just kind of took turns with, trying to punish each other off the ladder. I believe Edge actually did the execution off the ladder. Christian does his inverted DDT off the ladder. There's one spot where both of them just, they just kind of fly off the ladder together, and then they're just kind of, laid up on the floor, which seemed like forever. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of lag there, but there still was a lot of good stuff. There really was. They actually had the multiple ladders set up at one time, and Edge gets his revenge on Christian from Unforgiven. Christian low blowed Edge with the chair at Unforgiven, and Edge kind of it's like an eye for an eye, where Edge actually does the same thing to Christian this time. So I thought that was cool. They actually laid up a ladder on 2 different chairs, and Edge actually does a splash off the top rope. So yeah, some pretty nasty looking bumps. They really tried to, they really, gave each other a lot of punishment. But yeah, I mean, Edge definitely does get his revenge back. He does the low blow with the chair, and then on top of that, he actually does a concerto to Christian on top of the ladder, which I thought was cool. The fans were really into the revenge of Edge. Even during the storyline, you saw, Edge has really mastered like these facial expressions, like these evil looking facial expressions where he's playing with his hair and showing his teeth. And it's tough. It's not easy to do that. I remember taking acting lessons, and I was never really comfortable with, showing my teeth and, doing these nasty looking facial expressions where you're trying to act like an animal. But you could tell this whole feud with Christian here was a big step in the right direction for Edge, and you could just tell Vince really was like a mentor to Edge in terms of, getting that emotion and getting those facial expressions out of Edge. And the fans were really behind him. The fans, one thing about Edge in the end of 2001, the singles push, I think Paul Heyman even noticed that Edge had potential to be like the next Sting in terms of a babyface. And yeah, it definitely worked. The fans were definitely on his side. He gets his revenge on Christian. My only gripe with this thing is, yeah, I don't think the match has a lot of replay value. I don't think it flowed very well. I would agree that at times it just felt like there was way too much time in between spots. And then my other gripe was I just wish the feud had kind of went on a little bit longer. It only lasted in September and October. I think Edge versus Christian, it's something that you could have went back to for WrestleMania, especially when you look back and see exactly what Edge and Christian were involved in. I think everybody and their mother kind of has this idea that WrestleMania 18 could have been a much better card when you look back at it in retrospect. But yeah, that's the Edge Christian ladder match. I think it was good. I thought it was, it featured a lot of punishment. At times it was exciting. But for the most part, I think it could have been a little bit better. And I think Edge felt the same way. I remember in his book, The Adam Copeland on Edge, which he wrote before he even won the championship, he felt like it was good, but he just felt like the whole thing with Christian could have been executed a lot better. And I would definitely agree with that. Okay, so next up we got the Dudley Boyz taking on the Big Show and Tajiri for the WWF Tag Team Championships. So, yeah, at this time, and you could definitely see why they broke the Dudleys up for the brand extension, because it just seemed like when they didn't know who to put the tag team titles on, the Dudleys would always find a way to end up being tag team champions, and their matches were never really promoted that well, especially in a match like this with Big Show and Tajiri. It just kind of came off like it was filler. But yeah, this was pretty good though. Big Show was very animated here, actually triggering, ravishing Rick Rude and Razor Ramon. Big Show was kind of odd here. He was using his ass as a weapon throughout most of the match. So I wasn't a big fan of what Big Show was doing. But in terms of Tajiri, Tajiri really, I thought was awesome here. There was times where he was just going 2-on-1 at the Dudleys. He really was able to showcase some really nice kicks, the springboard, elbow splash. I really thought Tajiri, this might have been his best performance on pay-per-view. So really engaging stuff between Tajiri and the Dudleys, but the Dudleys ended up getting the 3D. And yeah, pretty solid tag match while it lasted. I would definitely say you could argue that, it felt like it was a television match, but the match was a lot better than I expected. I would say this was an above average match compared to what you would normally see on television. So good stuff there. But, at the same time, it definitely felt like, the Big Show Tajiri combination was just, kind of thrown together. Okay, next up you got The Undertaker versus Booker T. This is the first major one-on-one match these guys have had at No Mercy. And, yeah, this feud pretty much started as a tag team feud. It was Taker and Kane against, Booker T and Test. They feuded over the tag team belts. Taker screwed, Book and Test out of the tag team titles, right before this match. So they decided to do the one-on-one matches out in No Mercy instead of the tag team rematch. So yeah, I thought this was a huge opportunity to give Booker T that big win, because he had put over The Rock multiple times in a row. And, if you really wanted this invasion thing to really look credible heading into Survivor Series, this was a huge chance just to give Booker T some momentum, but it was not to be. I just think, to get a victory over Undertaker, you really had to earn Vince's trust. And I don't think we were quite there yet. I just think there was a lot of hesitancy from Vince, especially in this case. And even in the case with John Cena, I remember Cena was supposed to go over Undertaker in their first match at Vengeance, and they switched it at the last second, and Taker went over Cena. So it's the same situation, in my opinion, when you look back at this. I think that had a lot to do with it. Plus, I don't think Vince cared about WCW. The fact that he came out and just said, I'm sick of this crap. I think that speaks volumes to how much passion he actually had for this angle. I think you almost got the feeling from Vince that they just did it because they had to do it, that type of thing. But Undertaker and Booker T, it wasn't a bad match, but I just felt like it could have been better. I think Taker was really stale at the time. He got a haircut and he got a heel turn going into the next year, and I think that was much needed. And he definitely lost a lot of weight, leading up to the Survivor Series. I think Taker really needed to get back in shape. At this point, he quite wasn't there yet. He looked a little bit sluggish here. He was actually trying to do a little bit more MMA. A lot of, submission holds, busted out the armbar, the old school. You could just tell he was getting more into, more of the mixed martial arts scene at the time. I don't know. I thought Booker T was really getting, the fans on his side. Fans are going crazy for the Spin-a-Rooney. Taker would get these thunderous reactions, when the Rollin' song would hit. But then when the matches would start, the fans slowly lost interest. And I almost felt like the fans slowly got behind Booker here. And it's funny, the match reminded me of, Paul Heyman and Jim Ross. They would always get into these fights and arguments about the Spin-a-Rooney. Heyman would say Spin-a-Rooney's the most electrifying move, and JR would be like, no, it's not. He's like, show me something else. And then when Booker T hit the leg scissors, he's like, no, that's impressive, not the stupid Spin-a-Rooney. But, yeah, I don't know. The match was pretty forgettable to me. The match ended with Booker T is kind of showboating, punching Taker on top of the turnbuckle, very similar to the WrestleMania 17 finish. The cockiness kind of bites him in the ass, and then Taker does the last ride to get the pinfall. Not a bad match, but you easily could have billed this as a really, really you know, stacked triple main event if you gave this match better promotion and just, you know, more of a platform. And for whatever reason, they just didn't do it. But yeah, pretty mediocre match between Taker and Booker T, but not bad. Okay, next up we got The Rock versus Chris Jericho for the WCW Championship. So can Y2J finally win the big one? Yeah, they had that huge fight in the locker room between the Rock and Jericho. Stephanie played a huge role in this match. So Stephanie, obviously she did interfere, but the storyline was that she hated both Rock and Jericho for constantly calling her a slut and making fun of her. But if she was going to pick one, she was going to pick The Rock. So she actually did come out and try to help The Rock. But yeah, the video package is awesome here. It was kind of funny the way they edited this. They constantly, The Rock had this soundbite where he was like, what's going on between The Rock and Chris Jericho? What's going on between The Rock and Y2J? And they kept running it back. And then as they were running it back, Jericho was like, the general consensus is that Chris Jericho can't win the big one and that he's a choke artist, but I'm going to prove once and for all that I can win the big one. And then the video package ends with Jericho just saying, this is going to be huge. And it was, man. I love the match, man. I thought it was one of the best matches of 2001. I think you could definitely argue this is a top 3 Jericho match of all time. The chemistry between Rock and Jericho was just awesome here. It was almost like Steamboat, you know, very Steamboat and Flair like in terms of, you know, the way they moved in the ring here. I thought Rock was great. Rock, it's funny, they almost made Rock out to be more of the heel here, just by the way he was slapping Jericho, just by his facial expressions. And I would say that the crowd was definitely mixed. You know, a lot of the women and the kids were on the Rock side. Jericho actually had more of the fan support, I would say, from the older demographic. So yeah, it was definitely a nice mix of styles. I thought the match was definitely fast paced. The crowd was great every step of the way. And you know, they had the rock bottom through the table, and then they just had fun. You know, their matches were really always fun, Rock and Jericho. The creativity out of the people's elbow was exceptional. Here, yeah, definitely the spot in the match was when you know, Rock was going for the people's elbow after Jericho mocked it. Jericho actually did mock it, and then Rock put him in the sharpshooter. But when Rock goes for the people's elbow, it was, at the time, I thought it was an incredible counter, but Jericho actually counters the people's elbow into the walls of Jericho, and Heyman just starts going crazy, even though Heyman shouldn't even be invested in this, because this is what really surprised me at the time was this was not a WWF First Alliance match. So I was almost a little bit shocked that they went for this. But yeah, Heyman was like, Jericho, Jericho, as he had him in the walls of Jericho. And then Steph comes down, interferes, throws the chair into the match, and Rock actually brings her in the ring. And while the referee is trying to cater to Steph, Jericho hits the breakdown on the Rock, which is basically a skull-crushing finale. But Jericho does it on the steel chair, wipes the evidence out of the ring, and then Jericho wins the WCW belt. And yeah, I thought it was an awesome match, awesome moment for Jericho. I think they felt like they needed to put the belt on Jericho to really, you know, drive home this storyline between Rock and Jericho, who's the leader of the alliance, or Rock and Jericho on the same page. You couldn't have pushed it that easily without giving Jericho the belt. I think by giving Jericho the belt, you know, you finally saw him as an equal to the Rock. So I definitely think in retrospect that's why they did it. My brother didn't rewatch the match with me, but he was telling me that I remember him saying that he always felt like this was a wasted championship victory for Jericho. He felt like they should have saved Jericho's first official title win for a different time, for a time where he was going to carry it for a long time, because Jericho only kept the belt for a couple weeks. And then Rock actually won it back when they got back from England on the first Raw back from the UK tour. So it was only a 2-week reign, but I just felt like the title win and the way Jericho won, it definitely added a lot of animosity and heat to this feud. So I loved it, man. Obviously, I loved the Rock and Jericho feud. They had a great, it wasn't just a trilogy. They had a trilogy on pay-per-view where Jericho actually won all 3 matches. And then, you know, right before The Rock went off to Hollywood, he finally got that big win on Jericho, the first SmackDown of the brand extension. But yeah, The Rock and Jericho, I thought the whole feud was magic. So I love this match. Jericho, new WCW champion, without a doubt. Awesome stuff. Okay, next up for the WWF Championship, we got Stone Cold Steve Austin defending the belt against Kurt Angle and Rob Van Dam. All right, so there's a lot to say about this main event. I thought this was an awesome main event, highly entertaining. you know, it was a little bit short. It's not the greatest triple threat match ever. It was very chaotic, but I loved it, man. And, you know, the story of the match for me is RVD. And, you know, obviously Van Dam really got himself over to, I think, a level that a lot of, even the most diehard RVD fans had to be a little bit surprised by. I mean, you got to keep in mind, this is 3 months into the company, and he's main eventing a WWF pay-per-view. And this is Mr. Anti-WWE, Mr. You know, I'm staying in ECW for less money because I know WWE is not going to let me, you know, showcase RVD to the maximum degree. So it's just a phenomenal story when you think about it like that. And then you have Mick Foley endorsing RVD. Then and the Go Home show, you got Vince McMahon, you know, coming out of the limousine with Rob Van Dam, and he's doing the RVD thumbs pose right before the pay-per-view. So I mean, Van Dam just had so much momentum. And you know, I hate to sound like Isaiah from The Last Dance, but knowing what we know now, like if you had known that Austin was going to have major injury issues and walking out of the company, and the same thing with Angle too, all of the issues that would happen with him, and you know, knowing, you know, Triple H returning was really going to, you know, kind of, you know, be a big X factor in the way of RVD getting that, you know, the push that I think he so rightfully deserved. So knowing what we know now, I just wish a couple of things happened. Either one or two things should have happened. Either you give Van Dam the belt here, because you guys know I'm a huge fan of cashing in when the guy is hot, and nobody was hotter in the fall of 2001 than RVD. So I would have loved to have seen that. Even some of the RVD supporters were like, it's a little bit too soon. He get his moment down the road. He did get his moment down the road, but it wasn't what I envisioned. And I've always felt like, you know, this was something that was special. And at the same time, Austin felt like he deserved to main event WrestleMania 18, considering how successful WrestleMania 17 was. And I would agree to a certain extent. I think if you do RVD and Austin at WrestleMania 18 for the championship, you could still do all the other stuff that you wanted to do on the undercard. But I think it would have been great. It would have been rewarding the guy that was hot. And at the same time, you know, you keep Austin happy by having him in the championship match. But, you know, WrestleMania 18 was so difficult to book. But in retrospect, you know, there's a lot of roadblocks. You got Triple H returning, you got the NWO situation, you got the Undisputed Championship situation. To book RVD and Austin would have been very challenging. But if there was a way to do it, that's how I wish this whole thing would have played out. Because I thought they had incredible chemistry here. You know, Austin being jealous of RVD as RVD was on the verge of leading the alliance. You had Stephanie kind of petitioning for RVD to take over that spot. So Austin actually did, obviously he won the belt back on Raw from Angle. So they had RVD, you know, inserted into the triple threat. So Austin really wanted, you know, RVD to help him beat Angle, because the storyline was that Austin he could not beat Angle by himself. So they did these main events on Raw and SmackDown where RVD actually frog splashes Angle, and then Austin was going to have a party for him on SmackDown. And then when RVD arrives, he comes out of the limousine, but it was actually Vince that was in the limousine. So Vince really wanted RVD to win the championship back for the WWF. So Vince, it really looked like Vince was really going to side with Van Dam, but ultimately when you get to the pay-per-view, he didn't give a shit. He just really wanted the championship off of Austin, you know, going into Survivor Series. So so that was the storyline there. Yeah, I thought it was pretty engaging stuff. And just to see Vince's, you know, facial reaction and his, you know, RVD pose on the Go Home show, it was just an incredible moment. And it's just, if Van Dam somehow was able to accomplish winning the championship within 3 months, yeah, it would have been an incredible story, but it just wasn't to be. And you know, it seemed like the RVD push got slowed up a little bit here. But yeah, the bottom line was it does kind of feel like Angle was the odd man out right here. But yeah, I mean, after Angle lost the championship, it was decided that Angle would basically play a mole and join the alliance and just secretly, you know, be working for Vince McMahon. And ultimately Angle ended up screwing the alliance. But at this time, this was Kurt Angle's last match as a babyface for a really, really long time. But Yeah, but on to the main event. Awesome main event, very entertaining. Austin's pop when he came out was great. Austin was just in a zone here in terms of just his demeanor. Like, he just felt so comfortable. He was giving everybody the finger. There was a part in the match where he put Van Dam in a half crab, and everyone was just chanting, what? And Austin was like even surprised that the what stuff was catching on like that. So you could see him actually cracking up and smiling, like before he put Van Dam in the half crab. And there was this one guy in the front row. It's just one guy, and he starts going like this, starts going like, RVD, RVD. Austin turns around and just gives just the one guy the finger, and then, so I just thought that was funny. So Austin was just in his zone in terms of personality, in terms of charisma. He got a much better pop here than he did at Unforgiven, kind of, signs that things were getting back to normal. In terms of Angle in the match, though, yeah, like I was saying, Angle didn't really say anything on the mic in terms of the storyline. He just deserved the rematch. And, yeah, Angle was awesome here, though. He was able to, he kind of took a different approach to the match, felt like he had to kind of outfly RVD. So he actually busted out the moonsault. Van Dam was going for the frog splash. Angle sees it coming. Angle pops the running belly-to-belly suplex better than he had ever done up to that point. That was really awesome. Yeah, so Angle was really on fire here. They really made him look strong. Tons of suplexes from him. He just looked at the top of his game here. This was definitely, you could definitely see signs of Angle really improving as an all-around performer here. I really thought that. And Van Dam was definitely the most over guy the whole night. I would definitely say the stare down between Austin and Van Dam when Van Dam gave him the finger and did the RVD pose, like the crowd was just with him every step of the way. So yeah, Van Dam was awesome here. He took some suicidal chances. Austin and Angle were doing some stuff by the announce table, and Van Dam would actually jump off the top turnbuckle to break that stuff up. A lot of suicidal moves from him. Yeah, I just thought it was great. Probably one of the highlights of the match was Angle actually catches a spinning heel kick from Van Dam, kind of cradles him, and then does a belly-to-belly suplex while Van Dam's knee is locked in the suplex position. That was a really awesome suplex from Angle. So yeah, this main event was just fun. It was just a lot of fun. The only thing that really brought down the match was, so Vince comes out, and Vince is giving these really cheesy looking facial expressions. There's one sequence where Angle takes a stunner and he rolls out of the ring, and then Vince gives like this eye-rolling facial expression, and I just remember it turned off a lot of people. It just looked a little bit phony. And then Shane comes out and tries to attack Angle. Then Vince actually jumps on the Shane on the announce table, which looked pretty awesome. That Vince actually looks like he actually had a lot of intensity while he took down Shane. So they had to build tension to Survivor Series. So all of a sudden you got Vince and Shane going at it for the first time in months. So you definitely had to do it. And then everything broke down, got really chaotic, and then Van Dam takes probably like the worst stunner, probably besides the Trump stunner. Van Dam takes one of the worst stunners ever. I just think RVD liked to sell things differently, and it looked a little bit weird. That was one of the things that kind of hurt RVD going after the match, was he took a little bit of criticism for just the way he punches and the way he would sell certain stuff. It was very unorthodox to a degree, and some people kind of used it against him. But, Austin retains, kind of a predictable main event. I would have loved for them to not do the title change on Raw with Austin winning it back. Have Angle go into No Mercy as the champion. But I think, you really couldn't have done that whole Vince and RVD and the limousine stuff. And, you couldn't have done anything with Austin and the Alliance and all that stuff, because they obviously had zero confidence in booking Austin as the leader of the Alliance without the championship. So you definitely understand it. But yeah, I thought this was an awesome main event. It's short, but it's a lot of fun. It's highly entertaining. Yeah, it felt like an indie main event in front of a mainstream crowd. I just thought the main event had a lot of personality, a lot of different elements here. I loved it, man. You're always going to remember this show for RVD main eventing a WWE pay-per-view. you know, within 3 months into the company, which is just, it's kind of fascinating when you think about it. But yeah, man, awesome pay-per-view. I love the show. That's No Mercy 2001. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the review, and I'm out. All right.